This is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft chocolate, craft beer, and other artisan drinks. My name is David Nilsson. I'm a professional drinks writer, an advanced cicerone, the author of Pairing Beer and Chocolate, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or on annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Hey everyone, welcome to Bean to Barstool. Today is the final edition of my Collaboration for Chocolate Makers series. It's the final official edition. I'm going to have a couple guests coming up that are going to speak to a few of these things, but today is part 4, and we're going to be talking about creative collaboration. So outside the box ideas for collaboration that you might not have thought of. In part 1 of the series, we talked about the benefits of doing collaborations, financial benefits, cultural and institutional benefits. We also talked about things to consider before partnering for a collab. You can go back and listen to that or read the summarized version on the Bean to Barstool blog. In part 2, we looked at collaborations with beverage alcohol producers. So we talked about how those specific benefits from part 1 can apply there, different forms those collaborations can take, how to approach them, things to keep in mind before getting started. I broke that up into 2 separate parts on the blog, one focused on beverage-based collabs and one on chocolate-based collabs from those. In part 3, we discussed the possibilities for collaborating with other craft chocolate makers. There are, I think, a lot of missed opportunities with this, and I would love to see more partnerships along those lines. Today, we're talking about ideas for creative, unexpected collaborations. So partnerships with businesses or entities that you might not think about as options, but can really lead to some cool storytelling opportunities and visibility. These ideas are less intended as prescriptive, you should do this exact idea type of things, than ways to get your creativity moving and get you brainstorming different options for creative collabs. I fully expect I have missed more ideas than I've come up with here, so please share others as you think of them. To start out, I want to talk about some food-based collaboration ideas that some of you are probably already doing, but I think are easy to do more widely. And sometimes it just means formalizing the relationship to turn an ingredient provider into a collaborator. The most obvious example, and one that some of you are already doing, is working with a coffee roaster, a coffee shop. This is pretty easy. People already associate coffee and chocolate together. The flavors are often very complementary. Cacao beans and coffee beans are both roasted and take on complementary flavors. Not a big reach here from a flavor standpoint. I would wager most of you already have a coffee bar of some kind. I know many craft chocolate makers are also roasting coffee, which is awesome. We had Mike from Encore Coffee and Chocolate on the podcast a couple months back. You can go back and listen to that for a great example of how that can work in-house. But the majority of you who are making some kind of coffee craft chocolate bar are sourcing from a local coffee roaster. You probably put the name of the roaster on your chocolate label. All collaborating would mean reaching out to that coffee roastery and just kind of formalizing the collab relationship a little bit. A lot of this doesn't really involve changing anything you're doing from a process standpoint besides expanding your storytelling and marketing opportunities. So you can do some things with that coffee roastery on social media or in your newsletter to highlight the relationship. Put their logo on the bar. You can see some cross-selling of the bar in their shop, potentially. They can become a vendor for that chocolate bar or line of bars. You could even do an exclusive small batch coffee bar that is only sold through their shop. Coffee drinkers are primed to love craft chocolate, and they already understand the idea of paying more for a better product. If they're already paying for good coffee, they get the idea that this isn't just an artificial markup. There's a reason that you're paying more. So they are primed to be able to make that adjustment on the craft chocolate side as well. You could also look at rolling in a coffee and chocolate pairing at the coffee shop, or a comparative coffee cupping and chocolate tasting together. That can be a standalone collaboration, but it can also be a great way to be able to market a collab bar if you're working with them. Again, you're probably already making a coffee bar. This doesn't really require you to do much more from a process standpoint, but a little bit of legwork on the relationship side can lead to much better visibility and more storytelling and marketing opportunities if you make that a formal collaboration with the roaster. A lot of the same stuff applies working with tea shops. A number of makers make some kind of tea chocolate bar. If you are lucky enough to have a tea purveyor or tea shop in your area, reach out to them about doing some sort of branded collaboration. Much like we talked about with the coffee shop, you can potentially sell that at the tea shop, maybe even do an exclusive bar, maybe do some tastings or pairings. But rather than just saying we have this type of tea in our chocolate bar, being able to say that you worked with this tea company who advised you on this tea and like show a video of you guys doing tea tastings together or whatever can provide more of a storytelling opportunity and take this from just being an interesting ingredient to something that actually has a story behind it. In the same way, if you have a spice merchant near you that you work with, you could work on some kind of branded collaboration bar with them, working with one or more spices that they sell in-house. Again, just like with coffee, most of you are probably doing some kind of spiced bar, probably multiple bars. But if you're working with a spice merchant, you can bring in a little bit of their storytelling and their branding. It kind of works as a showcase for what they're doing in-house. So they might be very primed to sell your bar and show that, look at what these flavors can do when somebody is making something with them. You can also kind of elevate some of these spice names that everyone sees and assumes are a known quantity into being something that is thoughtfully sourced with a story behind it. So rather than just saying we use cinnamon or we use, nutmeg or whatever it is in this bar, you can talk about exactly where that came from. You can, show photography or video of you working with this spice merchant on exactly the origin and different things that go into it, and it allows for more storytelling opportunities and takes this from just being some, name in an ingredient list to suddenly something that people can take a little bit more note of. A little bit more outside the box in terms of food-based collaborations, you could potentially work with a local bakery. I know a few makers make bars that have like sourdough crumbles or something like that in them. You could work with an actual local bakery. That bakery undoubtedly has loyal fans who would be interested in seeing some of their favorite breads or other baked goods used in interesting ways in a chocolate bar. If you're in a rural area, especially, consider working with a local fruit farm. I know in my area here in Ohio, our fruit farms are beloved. We're not a fruit growing region, so there tends to be a lot of loyalty to the handful of fruit farms we have. Often the ownership of these farms goes back generations, and there's a lot of tradition around it, a lot of annual nostalgia when it comes to things like picking apples in the orchards or going and getting your pumpkins or whatever it might be each year. If you worked with a fruit farm on, let's say you wanted to do some kind of apple cinnamon bar, and so you're going to work with them to figure out what is the perfect kind of apples from their orchard to use. Maybe it's, pumpkin spice, maybe it's peaches, whatever they're growing, whatever you wanted to make. Again, it could potentially be sold at the fruit farm if they have some kind of shop or cafe there. But even if not, from a storytelling and branding standpoint on social media, that is a really cool thing that can bring in locals who might have a strong nostalgic connection to the things they've done at the fruit farm, but might not know much about your coffee shop. Again, a lot of this stuff, you might already be using ingredients like this. This is just about formalizing that relationship and being able to leverage that for marketing and storytelling. Let's expand beyond typical food and drink merchants a little bit and look at some more unconventional options. All right. A lot of makers love to work with foraged or locally grown botanicals or mushrooms or other wild edibles in limited release bars. So, why not look for some unexpected collaboration opportunities around these? You could work with a local nature preserve to use a wild edible that is grown in your area. You could even have a foraging event and have the Nature Center lead a guided walk or an educational talk on foraged ingredients from the area, and maybe potentially then use those in the bar. A portion of the sales could then benefit the preserve. You could work with a local foraging group or even a mushroom group on a specific bar. Maybe tap a local florist to collaborate on a bar with edible flowers of some kind. That is a really cool opportunity for your collaboration partner to do something that is totally outside of their normal range of opportunities. I mean, especially if you're looking at an amateur group, if you have a local club that forages mushrooms. Yes, that really is a thing, and they are typically diehards about their favorite hobby, which is super cool. How cool would it be for them to be able to work with a chocolate maker and see these mushrooms that they foraged make it into a really unusual bar? I'm sure they would be thrilled about the opportunity to do something like that. The important thing to understand with any of these types of ideas is that because you're the sole food maker involved in the collaboration, there really aren't many moving parts involved in the collab beyond planning and marketing. You're just making a chocolate bar like you do every day, possibly one you were planning to make or already make. You're just bringing in another party that can help raise interest, create a local connection, and provide more storytelling opportunities. Speaking of which, there's no reason a collaboration has to directly tie into ingredients at all. The options for creative collaborations with entities outside of the world of food or beverage or even nature are as limitless as your imagination. All right, here are a few examples that I've just jotted down, but truly we could sit here all day coming up with these. You could partner with a nonprofit you believe in to raise awareness for them and maybe donate a portion of proceeds to the cause. That is something you care about, so it's a cool thing to do, but it also generates goodwill, brings you a little bit of visibility. You can work with a local theater group on a bar that can raise funds for the troupe, as well as maybe be sold at their concession stand. Is there a local town festival or even a larger draw like a Comic-Con or HorrorCon type of event in your area? See if you can collab with them to make the official craft chocolate bar for the event, which is undoubtedly not something that already exists, and theme it somehow around what the festival celebrates. It's free marketing for the event and requires almost no work from them, and it gets you visibility when they share it and potentially sell it. Does your city have a roller derby team? Perfect. Make a bar with blackberries and blueberries and call it Bruiseberry or something silly like that. Roller derbyers love puns, so have fun with it. They will get a huge kick out of getting to be involved with something like this, and now you have a dedicated subculture in your local area who has an invested reason to check out your chocolate. How about working with a local band or record shop on a collab bar? It is instantly cool. You can have a lot of fun with them on the name and the idea. It's undoubtedly not something they have been approached about before. The bar could potentially be sold at the record shop. You could have the band in for a listening party at your chocolate shop when their next EP drops. Whatever, have fun with it. Do you have a beloved movie theater in your town? Collab with them on a bar that will only be sold at their concession stand. You can make it with buttered popcorn or something else silly to play off of the nostalgia of movie snacks. With all of these ideas that I just shared, group members themselves become customers, and you also get access to their fans as well, most of whom will never have heard of craft chocolate. The most important part of collabs of this nature is the storytelling component. You need to maximize what you get out of this from a visibility standpoint. One thing that can be fun is to invite the collab partners to help with making the bar. Now, I'm putting help in air quotes there. This is somewhat like having your kids help you make breakfast. This isn't necessarily going to make things go any faster. You're going to do a lot of hand holding, but They can pour some nibs into the melanger, or they can drop in some inclusions, or help you smell beans from different origins and share what they think so you guys can decide on the origin you're going to use together. They can also help with the name and maybe even some of the design ideas around it. The key here is that they get to be involved, and so now they have a deeper investment in the product. They have a cool story to tell. They got to help make a chocolate bar. They're going to tell people about the bar when it comes out, and you have way more interesting photos and videos to share because they were involved, even if technically they weren't a huge help from a work standpoint. The most important part of this kind of collab is the creative storytelling that goes along with it. So obviously you need to get all of the social media traction out of it that you can. But something like this can also be worth sharing with local media, TV news, newspapers, local websites, etc. I'm going to be doing a series this summer on media relations for craft chocolate makers, but for now, know that media is way less concerned with the size of a business or an event than with the unique happenings, the unique angle that goes along with this. So feel free to let them know about your next unusual collab, even if it seems like a small thing to you that they might not notice. There's really no correlation between the size of a business and what media might find interesting. As I mentioned with a number of these, in some situations, the collab partner can become a temporary or ongoing vendor for your products, but not always. So make sure you have that clarified before beginning and that you have an avenue for moving interest around the collaboration toward your physical shop or your online sales platforms to be able to move it. Approaching collab partners like this is as easy as just reaching out, expressing appreciation for what they do, and explaining your idea and how it would work. That last part is important because they might not have any sense of what would be involved in this, and they might be hesitant at the idea of having to take on tasks that they're imagining in their head that, like, you don't actually need them to take on. So make sure you explain to them what would actually be involved and, what you would need from them. This can happen over email or phone. You can invite them to your shop to talk more about it. You can visit them at their business, but just open that line of communication. The worst thing they can do is say no, and likely they're going to find it interesting as soon as they realize that you're not trying to sell them something, that this is a collaboration. A few things to consider unique to this type of collaboration, as I have emphasized repeatedly in every episode in this series. Make sure your values align with your potential collaboration partner. Do a little due diligence. Make sure you're not going to regret your names being associated once this product comes out. Plan everything in advance. This is always true for collabs, but it works a little bit differently here with the types of collaborations we're talking about because you're going to be solely responsible for making the end product. In the case of a food vendor like a coffee roaster or a spice merchant, there will be a collaborative process for deciding on origins or exact ingredients, but this is going to be your product, even though you're sharing the branding and marketing. Most of this planning then is going to fall to you, so you need to have your ducks in a row. The things that need to be fully discussed with your collab partner in advance are around deadlines, volume needs, branding and marketing, what the marketing plan is going to be, what the expectations are on both sides for that, what their involvement in the actual process is going to be. Are you going to have them come and help? How is that going to work? And what kind of release event, if applicable, you're going to have together. Finally, one thing to keep in mind just for your own well-being and expectations, your collab partner in this type of collaboration is likely to know nothing about craft chocolate, cacao farming, etc. Now, if you're working with a coffee roaster or something like that, they might have some familiarity. But if you're working with a community group or one of these other creative ideas that I've shared, they're not going to know anything about what you do. That might be obvious, but it can lead to some annoying interaction. So expect your collab partners to say things like, I only like really good chocolate like Lindt or Ghirardelli. And expect you to be impressed. Or they might want to garner cred with you by saying they don't like milk chocolate or white chocolate. They only like dark chocolate. They might balk at the price point for your planned collaboration bar. This is all to be expected, and you deal with it from casual customers all the time, but it can hit a little different when it's a creative partner that you're now tied to. So just be prepared to be doing a lot of Chocolate 101 level educating. And that's good. You have now an invested audience that you get to share the gospel of craft chocolate with and explain what cacao is and what you do and all that kind of stuff. Just be prepared for it. This is the last official episode of the Collaboration for Chocolate Makers series, though I will, like I said, be doing a couple sort of capstone episodes coming up involving interviews with folks who are doing some of the types of collaborations that we've been discussing throughout this series. If you go to any episode or blog post in the series, you can find a list of links to every entry so far, so you can always reference the info from the series. I hope this series has been helpful to you. If there are things you think would have been helpful for me to include or other ideas for collaborations that you think of, please reach out and feel free to share craft chocolate collaborations that you see or that you're involved in if you're a chocolate maker with me. I always want to hear about cool stuff happening out there, and especially with this topic that I've been focusing on, I would love to see what examples are out there that I have missed. If there are other creative off-the-wall ideas that I didn't think of, please let me know, especially if you've seen somebody do them. And if you end up pursuing a collaboration based on something that we've talked about in this series, I would especially love to hear about it. I will be sure to share it if you do. Thank you all so much for listening today. Thank you for listening to this series. Like I said, we've got a couple more fun conversations coming up along these lines. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Bean to Barstool.